All right, this is part two. Part two of this video. The Bible teaches racism 100% is God of Israel. All right, verse 17 says, and we're still in Genesis here. And God heard the voice of the lad, meaning Ishmael, the black son. And the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven and said unto her, what ailed you, or what bothers you, Hagar? Fear not. For God has heard the voice of the lad or the boy. Where is he? Verse 18 says, arise, lift up the lad, and behold him, and hold him in thy hand, and I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes. Well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad or the boy a drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness, and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran. And his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt, which is in Africa. So we can see that Ishmael, first wife and son, Ishmael's wife would have been African. So that means that the black female, once again, connected to Ishmael, would have made their kid African. All right. Well, let's take a look at what this great nation grew to be. And I want to go to the New Testament, actually. And we're gonna go to Galatians. And I don't believe, I'm not agreeing with the Bible. I'm just speaking this biblical language to all you. It's They say 8 billion people on the planet, and half of you still believe in the Bible. So I'm gonna speak this biblical language to show you that the Bible is definitely fallible. And this is why you must experience the God that you're serving. All right. We're going to go to Galatians chapter 4, starting with the 22nd verse. And the reason why I'm starting right here is because we want to pick back up on what is become of these bloodlines, of these two bloodlines, or these two covenants, these two different races. All right. Starting with the 22nd verse, we see it says, it says, for it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid or a slave, the other by a free woman. But he who was of the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by the promise. Which things are an allegory. Now it's being used as an allegory to describe the covenants, but if you take it for what it says, it really happened. But Paul is saying it was just an allegory. He said, for these are two covenants. The one from, and we're going to turn this page, and I'm reading out of a King James Bible. For all of y'all that's wondering, this is a King James Bible right here. It's the only Bible y'all believe in. And it says, for the one from Mount Sinai was gingers or births to bondage, which is Agar. So it's saying that Agar is giving birth to slaves, or her children is in bondage. For this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia and answers to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. So this the New Testament saying that it's now in bondage with her children, which is the Africans, because we understood that Ishmael got a Kemetic or Egyptian wife, as the book says. So it says, for it is written, it says, but Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is the mother of us all. So Jerusalem is supposed to be Sarah. And this is Galatians chapter 4 from verse 22 through verse 26. And as we can see that Paul says in verse 30, nevertheless, what says the scripture? Cast out the bondwoman and her son, for the son of a bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of a free woman. Now, segregation was justified with these scriptures. If you got scriptures, if you saying that Hagar or the African black female that Abraham had out of Egypt had a son for him, and that son was casted out, and he eventually married an Egyptian or a Kemetic wife, then we can understand that it would be of African descent. And now the New Testament is saying, and this is after Jesus allegedly was nailed to the cross, the New Testament is now telling us that these two bloodlines, one is supposed to be slaves and the other is supposed to be free. It's supposed to be this way. And this is why when you get to the next book, Ephesians, uh, chapter 6, verse 5, it tells you, and you see it's blurry there, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters, according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, and singleness of your heart, as unto Christ. Like, obey them like they Jesus. Not with eye service as men pleasers, but as servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart. And it ends on to say, verse 7, with good will doing service as to the Lord and not to men, knowing whatever so good thing any man does, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. So this says that it's your master. And for all y'all that want to say, well, that's just talking about your boss. No, it's saying that be obedient to them according to the flesh with fear and trembling. So read verse 5. It says with fear and trembling. You don't fear and tremble from your boss, but you do fear and tremble from your slave master. So this is clearly teaching that, and we understand that this got to be the descendants of who they would call Ishmael or the other bloodline. So we got to keep things in context with the scripture. They basically saying that they bloodline is superior in the covenant, and they're the ones that talk to God, and whatever. But the Bible started this racism, and you have a God that's obviously racist in the Old Testament because he has chosen a race. You're not chosen by your dignity or the works that you do or your righteousness within yourself. You're chosen by the fact that your bloodline goes back to Abraham and Sarah. And Abraham and Sarah walked from Turkey or Mesopotamia. But that's not, we don't consider that. He walked into the African, he walked into the culture. You know what I mean? He walked into that, walked into it lying, came out rich, and now uh, the child that's come from the woman from the culture that made him rich is casted out as a slave, and they can only be slaves, and that woman can only give birth to slaves, and that's a signification of a covenant, our covenant. And I say our because these are the scriptures that brought us here. But I'm going to show you how Jesus never backed that up. That's going to be in the next. So stay tuned. Peace.